What's up, guys? It's Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ. It's often said that shorter people have an advantage when it comes to lifting weights. And this is simply due to the fact that they have to move the bar less of a distance when it comes to just completing something like a bench press, squat, or deadlift. First, we need to make a very crucial distinction, and that's between relative strength and absolute strength. And relative strength just means pound for pound how strong you are, and then absolute strength is just how much weight you can lift regardless of your body weight. And this is where there is no doubt at all that when it comes to relative strength, that being shorter is a huge advantage. And this is why you see lifters in lighter weight classes at the elite level are always very short. It's just a fact because you just need to be short so then you can pack on more muscle mass being shorter, and there of course is that leverage advantage and you're just moving the bar less of a distance as I established earlier. However, when it comes to absolute strength, this is where the thought that being shorter is just better for leverage, shortens the distance, and that's it, case closed, therefore it's easier. This is where that becomes a myth, because when it comes to absolute strength, you would think then that a 5'5" guy, 5'3" powerlifter would have the all-time world record in the squat, in the bench, and the deadlift. And that's just not the case. They're all around the average height. They're around 5'9" to around 6 feet tall. And then there are also many other examples of people who are well above 6 feet who are incredible strength athletes. Some of them being Brad Gillingham, for example, who's a multiple IPF world champion, and he's 6 feet 5 inches, deadlifts over 800 pounds and has done it repeatedly in competition. And then there's also guys who are actually into strongman and not even necessarily powerlifting, and guys like Big Z and Brian Shaw, their deadlifts are up there with the best powerlifters in the world. It's both over 900 pounds, both of them, and Brian Shaw is 6'8" to give you an example, and Big Z is 6'3", I believe. So you'll find strongmen, they also have the strongest overhead presses in the entire world. And they are on average, I would say 6'3" and above. Some of them are around 6 feet, but you don't find many that are 5'10" and under at all. So when it comes down to it, there are way more factors that come into play than simply saying the distance the bar has to travel, and whoever has the shortest distance therefore has the advantage. Because if you do have a bigger structure, you have thicker joints, and you potentially can carry more muscle mass, then you can overcome that disadvantage by being able to produce more force. So that's why you see the biggest key here is that you have to fill out your frame if you are going to be a very competitive, taller strength athlete. That just is a necessity. So what I would argue is that what's more important than just overall height is actually limb length proportions, because that directly affects your mechanics in each lift beyond just how far you move the bar. Okay, so since we've gone the practical route and we just looked at, in terms of absolute strength, Okay, so since we've gone the practical route and we just looked at the top lifters in terms of absolute strength and saw that they are not abnormally short and they're around average height, if not slightly taller, I'm actually going to argue that this strongly shows that being shorter is not an advantage to the point where it may be a significant disadvantage. And the reason being is that we have to consider the fact that almost every other sport that has much more incentive rewards being taller. Look at football, for example, American football, then look at basketball, even a sport like track that I was involved in before powerlifting, that would have rewarded me being taller as a long jumper, and if I was, I may have never taken powerlifting this seriously. Another aspect to this discussion when it comes to if shorter people are stronger, it's to look at how do we define strength. If we define it in terms of powerlifting, just saying your powerlifting total, then it's an easier discussion. But you could say it's about force production and it's about how much weight you can lift over a certain distance, essentially. And then it becomes more like strongman training, when it becomes more practical, you could say. And then you see, as I said before, strongmen are well above average in terms of height. So I would argue that taller people are stronger in a more practical sense, in a more accurate description than just your squat, bench, and deadlift. So given all the points for shorter people being stronger in terms of relative strength, some people have asked me, do I think that this is unfair? do I think that there should also be height classes? And for this, I will refer you to my video about genetics being unfair, similar to steroids. And in that, basically the simple answer is that anything that follows the rules is not unfair in the sense that it should be eliminated. It's that fairness in terms of equality was never the goal of sports. That's not the intention. It's the exact opposite. It's to see variety. I also want to talk about practical takeaway, and that, or let's say not practical takeaway, but a practical conflict we have from this is that if you are a natural lifter, it becomes very difficult to decide what weight class you want to eventually work up to. Because on one hand, being shorter, being as short as possible, is going to be an advantage because, as I said, it's a huge advantage in terms of relative strength. However, you have a huge issue where the higher weight class you go, the more steroids can be helpful in my opinion, because then you can pack on more muscle mass, and as a natural, you're limited in the amount of muscle you can put on. So overall, I hate to say it, but if you are a taller power lifter who is natural, and especially if you want to stay in shape, I do believe that you are at a significant disadvantage. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but I think it is a hurdle you may have to overcome. And then what I also want to say though is on the other end of the spectrum, it is not a significant disadvantage when it comes to just general strength, being taller outside of powerlifting purposes, outside of weight classes. It's not a disadvantage, you'll just end up having to weigh more. And that's going to be a natural consequence. You don't even necessarily have to force it. Just the years of lifting and then having a bigger frame, of course, will just make you a heavier lifter, and you'll still be able to hit those big numbers, despite the fact that you are moving the bar a greater distance. So that's it, guys. Make sure to like the video, support the channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching, guys. Peace!
Biggie died, they shot a star. Who you know in West LA? Bring that ruckus to MA. Jeez.
That peeking in my window with the pistol to my curtain.